Like everyone else in the ghetto, we had a hiding place. When my father was murdered, we were taken out of the little room, because then there were 3 people, and that room was for 4 people enough. And we were brought to another apartment, another end of the ghetto. And there we lived on the 2nd floor. There was a little entrance hall. There was a kitchen behind it. To the left side there were a large room and a small room, and to the right side there was a small room. And there was a cabinet that covered the door, but they had two tall glass-covered cupboards on the side. In the middle it was too low, but we found a tin dish that was exactly filling in this gap. So closing the door with a cabinet, we could sit there. So when first of all, this nothing simple. There were several times they were taking transports to different places. In 42, I think there was still, they announced they need several thousand of young, intelligent people, married young, and they will be taken to Kovna, and they have a special job for them. But they were taken by train, the train stopped and they were killed. So there was nobody believed in it. But when they were taken some month, in August, at the beginning of August, the group was taken to Estonia. It was the first time that they were escorted by Jewish police, and they sent letters letters to the families showing that they lived their life. And then, at the beginning of September, the demand was again of several thousand volunteers to go to Estonia. So the first reaction was all the men hid in the room. We close, very close, and the police came over, and they didn't find us. When the police left, we knew that they will come back, but we couldn't come out for several minutes, and somehow we decided, I don't remember if it was my initiative or my mother's, that I will not hide again. I will disguise myself with clothes of my sister. And I got a scar, and there was some pain. The story was that I'm a sick girl, I'm lying in bed, and police came over, and they didn't realize me. But the Germans announced that if there will not be enough volunteers, they will explode the ghetto. And all of a sudden, when I'm disguised as a girl, there was an explosion, and after several minutes, another explosion. Now, in 1996, I met an historian from the ghetto, and she was sure that on that day no house was torn down, but they to take out people from the hiding places, they were throwing grenades. So I heard the 2 explosions, and I said that there's not enough volunteers, and I'm hiding as a girl, I want to volunteer to go. And my mother somehow agreed. There was no time. And I put on my clothes. She gave me a little sack with a piece of bread, and I volunteered to go. So my sister and my mother escorted me. My sister was stopped immediately by policemen in the street. My mother was led some 400 meters farther. Then she was stopped. We waved to one another, and my sister says that I shouted to my mother that we will meet again, but that was the last time she waved to me. And we were taken to the Judenrad. There were trucks waiting for us, and we were taken to the railway station. We were put in an animal wagon. That's an entirely closed wagon with two little slots. They put in, filled in entire, as much as possible. They pushed in many more people. Then they put in a box with 6 bottles of water, and the stronger man took it away the same moment. They shut the door. Then they hanged a lock, but that was not enough. They brought a wooden crushing, and with nails they secured the door. The little slots were closed with barbed wire, and we were waiting. So we were shut inside. And now there were, among the people, there were some that worked at the railway station, and they knew the directions. And then it was wartime, so military trains came over, and we were, a small locomotive came, pushed us to one direction, another direction. So when he pushed us to the north, everybody was glad. That's to Estonia. When we were pushed to the south, the people started crying, that's Ponar. And we maneuvered so some 5-6 times until in the evening a locomotive came, they organized a real train, and we were taken to Estonia. So we went for, I'm not sure if 3 or 4 days and nights were closed, shut off from the world. The train stopped only to fill water and coal. No connections to the outside world, so we didn't know exactly if it's night or day. I was sitting because I was near the wall. Well, there were people that had no place to sit. It was very hot. It was September still. And on the last day, the train stopped at Vaivara. The train was stopped. They opened up the doors. Schneller, schneller. Schnell is quick. Schneller, schneller started beating. And they emptied the wagon very fast, but not thoroughly, because there were several people died on the way, so they stayed there. They didn't go off schneller. And we were put in rows of 3 and were taken to Vaivara camp. And that was a new life or death for me. That's when it started. So Vaivara camp, that was where we were brought in, was a swamp area. There were little islands of 2-3 meters. There were Jews sitting there for the first transport. And towards the evening we were given an aluminum dish and a wooden spoon and and that tin second a cup, and that was, so I had what to put in my little sack. So we were given soup. It also was called soup. So there were pots of 50 liters, large ones, and the people of the kitchen came, and then it was very, very important if the person that divides the soup, if he puts in the ladle and he takes it out, it's only water. If he turns it, so there's a chance that you have some leaf of some potato peels or something to eat. And then we were taken to a barrack, an empty barrack, all of us on the floor, one near another. And the next morning we were wakened. Everybody got a piece of bread and a cup of something that's called coffee, but it was dirty water. It was even not cicoria. And I started eating the bread and I can't swallow because I was dry. After several days of not drinking, I gave a piece of my bread to somebody to get his coffee. I knew that it's a death sentence, because the amount of calories that you got there was minimum. So if I don't eat my bread, I will die. In the film of Yad Vashem, I'm telling the story, and he cuts there because we filmed 30 hours by 2 cameras and a drone, and he had to make a film of 1 hour. But he didn't finish the sentence because I say that I can't eat and I'm going to die of it. But on Sunday we didn't work, and I somehow went around the camp and I came to a tent of the first aid. And a nurse came out for it, looks at me and says, what are you doing here, Saadia? She knew me from the ghetto. So I told her one word, water. So she disappeared, came back with a bottle of water. I drank the bottle of water, and it somehow organized the humidity in the liquids in my body, and I started eating my bread. So there was a lot. We were working at wood, felling big trees. So every morning we would go and after eating this piece of bread, we're going to work several kilometers. And some days, some 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks later, when you are going back from work, people not belonging to the camp are going to the Jews are going to the camp, marching from the railway station. So I asked them, who are you? So I said, they liquidated Vilna ghetto, and we were sent here. So at my knowledge base, I knew that the ghetto was liquidated, and the people that were not liquidated were sent to Estonia. I asked them if my mother and my sister is among them. So they say yes. So I ran like crazy to the camp, and I was looking for them, and I realized that it was a mistake. And I was broken. I was working, but all of a sudden I would cry. And I was already 15 years old. There was a boy called Yaakov that was 17 years old. He helped me several times. And he went over to me once. He looked at me and said, Saadia, if you want to live, you are not crying anymore. And I believe that I have never got such an advice, because I took it seriously and I stopped crying. So now my job in the forest was to cut, when a tree was cut off, there's the stump. So I had to cut the roots and take out. And I had an axe. And not far from me was a honing stone, you know, the ones with the handle that was half in water. So I decided, after 2 years in the workshops, I knew how to sharpen things. So I sharpened very sharp my axe. And I went back to my stump. There was very much water around, there was mud. So I was working barefoot. And the sharp axe was wonderful until one of the roots was very strong and it jumped off and it hit me between my two toes. Now, the first thing in modern medicine, you would give antitetanus. I had a wet sock, so I put on my sock, and that was it was a lottery if it will work, if it will the wound will close or not. But maybe that in the ghetto, I was wounded very many times in my fingers when working. So maybe that I have in my blood some antibodies, and in several days the wound closed. So there were many times I was by good chance rescued. So we were after work. So it was always after work. Sometime later was an announcement that we're moving. And they're moving us to another camp. But that was more or less 50 kilometers. We were, after work, we would stand in the rows of trees, and the commander of the German commander would ride a horse, and we would walk. So let's say the first time it became cold. Already winter. It was October already, and that night of walking it was snowing, but it was wet snow. The snow was sticking to the shoes, and as it reached, let's say, 10 centimeters, it would break off. So one leg, you were walking 50 kilometers on stairs. Because it would gather to one shoe, but then the other one would break off. And the same happened to the guards that were walking from both sides of our column. It was so difficult to walk that the guards began to cry, and there were guards that gave their rifle to a Jew to carry it, 6-7 kilograms. So let the Jew carry it. We didn't know where we are. Nobody knew Estonian. So there was no danger that we will run away, or what shall we do with a rifle? Nothing. So that's how we finished the night. and we came to another camp. We came to Kuromai. In Kuromai there was not a shack, not a wooden shack. There was a large house, maybe of a rich Estonian. There were beds of three floors, three beds, and everyone was given 3 blankets, 3 military blankets, because it was already nearly minus 20 degrees Celsius outside. The commander of this camp was a very clean person. He had us to build a bunker, underground bunker, and made it a sauna with hot stoves. And then every now and then they would take the blankets and have it steamed to kill the lice. The main job on Sunday was to kill your fleas from the head, from the clothes. That was all the day work. So they were cleaning the blankets, and then the blankets were returned. They were taking the clothes to treatment of the steam. So sometimes a blanket gets lost. So when they were bringing back the blankets, who is getting less? The small hero. I was a small boy at that time, so I got 2 blankets, and after several times I got only 1 blanket, and then I got a torn one that was a little more than half a blanket, and it is possible to make a mattress, a blanket, and a pillow from half a blanket. But you are lying so concentrated, that it would hard be very bad in the night. But somehow I found a way to survive. So I had less than a whole blanket. When I had to go out, nobody goes to the toilet. You would be outside. So, but I would be wrapped in my half blanket, and if there was a wind, it was blown, and I would stay naked in the minus 20 where the wind. So it was not very easy there. I was in 5 camps. So every time. One time, also in the winter time, we were called, organized the column to go, but somehow the commander didn't come over. We were waiting, and all of a sudden I felt my stomach. I had to do something, so I found some brush. And I did what I did, and then they started shouting that we were moving. At that time, I didn't have a belt. I tied my pants with a wire, but my hands were frozen, and I couldn't tie it. So I asked maybe 10 people that helped me to tie my but they were afraid. I will tell you why they were afraid in a moment. So for 50 kilometers, I was keeping my pants in my fists. In one hand I had my little bag. It's not very simple, and my hands were cold, the time more and more cold. I couldn't activate the hands. So it was nice. Now, why were the people afraid to help me? Walking in the camps in Estonia was not just a march. It's enough if you have 4 or 5 guards at the end. They have clubs and rifles. So if somebody gets too weak, he can't walk fast enough, they either shot him a bullet in the head, or if maybe he's an artist, he's still not so bad, so they would hit him with a club, and I said, mostly he would get, after they'd been beaten with a club, he would get a bullet. So now, before leaving the camp, the strongest people were taking place in the 3-4 rows at the head. Now when we started walking, everybody knew that it's very dangerous to stay to the last lines. So everybody would try to pass forward, but the stronger men would not let somebody pass them. So they would walk very much, as fast as they can. So walking in Estonia was almost running. That was because you tried to get forward, and the first ones didn't let you. And it's you are going, if you are strong enough or you are not strong enough, if you hear the shots from behind, you are walking. So there were several ways which were right for all the camps in Estonia. Let's say there were the selections. There was, after work, there were a roll call of all the people. You stood in rows of 3 or sometimes rows of 5, some 20, 30 meters from there were the commanders of the camp, and there was a capo, a Jewish capo, that was showing everybody that his turn to walk comes. And he would show, you go towards the Germans. The commander wouldn't say a word. He had white gloves. You came, he would show, this way. He would only show. To the left, there was a couple was making making them stand, everybody. And to the right, there was another couple. But when all of the people of the camp passed the Germans, the ones that went to the left were taken back to camp. The ones that were sent to the right were disappearing. They were taken to the forest that same evening. They were killed. And that was very often. There were, so I knew how dangerous it was. And it's not important how I felt. These 30 meters I was running. There was something again that maybe that made a good impression. We had those round caps of the prisoners, you know, the caps. Everybody would take it. There was Bitzen up and Bitzen auf. Put on and put off if a German came, you had to take off the head. And if several hundred people are staying, you take off the cap, and you need to hear the 500 people one sound. If somebody hits earlier or half a second earlier, he gets some. Yes, you know what's kniebogen? It's bending your knees 50 times or 80 times. So somehow from the beginning, I got my cap with two fingers at the same place. And little by little it got some little roof, like Arafat had something like that on Evin Skafia. There was, so maybe that my head made a good impression on the Germans. It was it was different from all they had. So you can know why you survived. So I must cut it short, because I will concentrate maybe on what I call the worst camp. That was Soski. It was 37 kilometers from the Russian border across Leningrad.
So is this inside Russia itself?
Please?
Where was this? Inside?
It was in Estonia.
Still in Estonia?
Yes, it was in Estonia, but it was
the border.
The northeast Estonia. So it was 30, we were there. We were making a railway to the front in a swamp area. Now, to make it not so nice, our camp was 15 kilometers from the working place. So you had to walk 30 kilometers a day, work 10 hours, and you did and there you got the same portion of bread, but once in 3 days. And there was nobody that could stop eating. You got, let's say, 450 grams of bread. You were taking apart the work. Somehow it was a little bit to the side, we were cutting off, you finished it. And it was clever to finish it, because if you would leave a piece for tomorrow, somebody would steal it at night. There was a special technique. The thieves had wires with a special angle, and we were sleeping one near the other, so they were standing near the feet, and they were stealing the bread. When the Germans caught someone that stole bread, so the Germans said you shouldn't steal bread from your friend, and they were sentenced to be beaten with 50, 80 times, and this was like the death sentence, because and all the camp had to witness the beating of the thieves. So once one was beaten, and he couldn't put on his pants. So two people were dragging him. And next morning, I found this man in the group where I worked. And he asked us that we should cover him. They shouldn't see that he cannot move. And somehow, that day, we rescued him, but he disappeared afterwards. So, at Soski, got our bread every 3 days. We went 30 kilometers a day, worked 10 hours, and there more than 50% of the people died during the 2.5 months that we were there. Very clearly, the first ones to die were tall, wider people. Their body needed more calories. And they were getting the same, and they died of hunger. So I'm writing in a book about my job was there to make a railroad in the swamp. You put bunches of branches on the swamp. On that you put trees, then again branches, Then you put soil and little stones, and on that you put it. So my job was carrying those bundles of branches. There were branches of 4 or 5 meters long, and there were 2 people, one at the end, one at the other end. I knew the work good. I knew that you have to take opposite shoulders, because otherwise it falls down. So, but we were going in the swamp, and there were, although it was winter, sometimes the sun would come in, it would melt part of the ice. So I'm just telling the case that, let's say, the ice broke under my legs, and I fall half my body into the swamp. My partner didn't know it. He was taking the bundle, and he would let me fall. And such couples of carrying the branches, and mostly were accompanied by a guard. So the guard came with his club and started schneller, schneller. So I would crawl out of the water, and I would hope that it will get dry before it will freeze. So there were one day, in the middle of the day, they started shouting that we should go out to the road. We didn't know why. We came out to the road, there was a snowstorm. And the snowstorm with the wind. So the snow went diagonally. And they organized us in the rows of 3 that started walking. They saw that the visibility was less than 1 meter. They said everybody is free to go back to the camp. Go on your own time. So I made it fine. I made it in 5 hours, the 15 kilometers. There were people that came after 20 hours, and there were many people that froze in the fields. So after the storm was over, they organized some groups of people that were collecting corpses. And to make that things more interesting, one of those marches, on the way back home, my shoes disintegrated totally. I had no shoes. There was snow. So I went over to the commander. And the commander was one that he said that you have to work for the Third Reich, and I have to give you means to work for the Third Reich. So long as you have no shoes, you don't have to go to work, but you have to go to the roll call in the morning. The Jewish head works good. Our barracks were in a forest. We had enough wood for there was an oven in the middle of the barracks. So there were 5 or 6 men that had no shoes. We found large flat stones. We would get up earlier than the camp got up. We would put it on the stove, warm it. Then we would go 300, 400 meters to the place of the roll call, barefoot in the snow, but carrying the stone. Now, after we were organized into straight lines for the roll call, we would put down the stone and stand on the stone, and that was enough for the 15-20 minutes of the roll call, if the amount of people it was right, because the German or the Estonian soldier was counting. Now, if somebody died, some people died at night, and they couldn't, were not accounted for. So the German at less than he was expecting. We were staying until they were found. Until the amount of people was exactly. So we could stay half an hour and an hour, and the stone was 15, 20 minutes, it was warm, afterwards it was cold. And if you ask me, it's very, very, very difficult to stand on a frozen stone for half an hour. The worst was there were people that tried to escape. I don't know what they think thought of, but the Germans with dogs were chasing them, and the roll call was standing until they were found. They were killed or brought alive back. So there were many days that we were standing. Then after, I don't know how much time, maybe 10 days or a week, wooden shoes were brought. And I was given a pair of wooden shoes, and I went to the Mahsan, and I found a piece of fabric of a cover of a sofa. It was, and I made for it to, I don't know, how do you call it when you instead of stocking, you make from the British Army was going with such with the papa. They were instead of stocking, instead not on your leg.
Like tights or.
Yeah, so I found a way to tie it so that I will walk 15 kilometers and it will not open up, because if it would open up, I would stop to tie it, and I would reach the end of the column and it would shoot me. So I was lucky enough that I did it. So there were very interesting things. There were several camps. I'm shortening it, but there was in one camp before Soski that this Gideon, this boy, the elder boy, came back from work. He worked in a village, and he brought a walking stick, a nice walking stick, which Russian war what do you call it? Well, they made it, and he asked me if I can do a stick like this also. Wow, should be here.
Yes, the walking stick.
There is, yeah, there's walking there. So I made a walking stick. That's already weeks later in another camp, because for several weeks I showed, I made such a stick on, first of all I saved some of my bread and I exchanged it into a pocket knife. And then Sunday I made a stick. I took a branch of birch wood and I made a walking stick, and I gave it to Gideon. Gideon showed it to his German boss. The German boss liked it, and they asked him to bring me over, and he nominated me as the Stockschnitzer. As I was and he put me near the fire where the guards worked when we worked in the woods, and I made sticks, but it was not so simple. At the beginning, I didn't know that the swastika has a special direction. And on my first stick, I made the swastika the wrong way around. So I was beaten so hard that I know the direction of the swastika. If you will wake me in the middle of the night, I will tell you what's the right direction of the swastika. And for several weeks, and the German made a prize, and I would get half a loaf of bread for every stick. He made the sticks for his friends. And I worked 2-3 days I was sitting in the fire, and for several weeks I was a bread millionaire. I got half a loaf of bread for every stick. But we went to another camp. We went then to Soski, and nothing worked. But at the camp after Soski, I was, first of all, the Kotla Hereda camp I was in a very bad condition already. Half of the people died, but most of the people were half dead. I reached a stage where the Germans called it Muslim. As a Muslim, I don't know why. That is bones and skin, and the person is living his spirit. He doesn't want already to survive. And I was already nearly approaching this stage. Of course, the condition of the workers in Soski was impossible. And then we went to another camp, and I worked still, but I really felt very bad, and I had good luck. Good luck, because one morning on the way to work, I felt pain from the other side of my knee, and I worked a day, but it became worse and worse. And to go back from the camp, I took two branches, and I hardly came back to the camp, and I had no way out, and I went to the sick room. And again, the paramedic knew me, somehow from the ghetto, maybe from the days of my father, and he said, he diagnosed that I have a rose. You know, it's such a wound with a deep wound. But he said that he has left several injections of Prontozil. Prontozil was a sulfa medicine, the most advanced one before antibiotics. So he said that he is ready to give me injections, but I have to lay down in his infirmary. So I asked him, what with the Kirkenik? Kirke in Yiddish is a pickaxe, because there were a German sergeant, that every 2 weeks or every 10 days would take a pickaxe, enter the sick room and kill all the patients. So it was called the Kirkenik. So I said, well, what with the Kirkenik? I'm afraid to lay down. So he said, no problem. I will put you in the middle of the barracks. He comes in from one side. You are anyway sleeping with all your clothes on, with the shoes on. So I will warn you and you will run away. And he kept me there for some 10 days. And I was like in a resort, because all the beds were pushed together. It was like a floor, and I was lucky enough that my neighbor from the left side and my neighbor from the right side, one of them or both of them died at night. So in the morning I would get their soup, and I had their piece of bread. So for those 10 days, I was strong enough. When I came out from the infirmary, I could pass a selection. I was strong enough again. So there were such things. When I came out, I heard that there is a workshop of railway wagons, repairing railway wagons, and that the German commander, has a Jewish jewelry maker which makes rings for his friends. So I made it on Sunday, a walking stick. I came over there and said I'm a professional, I'm doing those sticks. And he had a big lathe, some 80 centimeters from the wall. Behind this lathe, the jewelry maker and I were sitting, each of us at the hammer. And if a German came in, a German not of the workshop, our boss would whistle, and we would come out with the hammer and hit for the Third Reich, or would worked. And he would sit down near me sometimes. I believe that he had a son of my age or something like that. And he would ask me, what do you want to do after the war? And I would laugh at him. I would say, and there's no chance that you will let me survive. There's no chance that I will survive. What do you ask what I want after the war? I will be dead before it. And at that time, there are many stories, because we met soldiers of the German Wehrmacht, and when Russian airplanes came over and they were shooting and throwing bombs, the Germans were jumping into the snow, lying down. We were standing and watching, so they were, how? You are not afraid? You don't know that it's so very dangerous? So I said, well, for us there's no difference. You are killing us, or they will kill us. No, nothing. So they would give one another sweets, and they would give us also for Verstärkung, to give you back your strength after the airplane passed. But there were many things. So I was working for this the boss, and we heard more and more cannonballs, because the Russians took over Leningrad, and they started to advance into Estonia. So the end of most Jews in Estonia, I can show you only how the Jews ended. That's in the camp of Kloga. You see that there are layers of wood and layers of corpses.
They put them...
You see, the Germans didn't ignite it, and the Russians came. So the Russians took the picture, because most of the Jews were killed. Several thousand of Jews were killed, but our camp was ordered to walk. We were chased to the west. In all the the width of Estonia, because we were in the east side, and Tallinn, the seaport, was in the west, on the seashore. We were walking day and night, more or less. They didn't have food for us. Sometimes they would get some water or some bread. We reached Tallinn, and were taken immediately to the airport, into the seaport, and we found out that the ship was taken by the army. The ship that they had to ship us to Germany, the ship was taken. So several thousand Jews with their German commanders that didn't prepare anything, because we were to go on the boat, but they didn't know what to do. So one of the officers went to town. He came back with some trucks of wooden boards. There were boards like 2.5 meters long and 1.5 meters wide. There were several boards, but they were together. And we built like a card house, one after another, along such place. The one end was closed by boards. The other end was closed by boards with a door. And let's say 150 people were sleeping there, were sleeping from both sides under this roof, but it was not wide enough, so the legs were interlaced. Now, if somebody had to go to the toilet from the end, he would run on the legs of everybody to the door, open the door and pee outside. But there were people, sick people, and their stomach was bad, and they wouldn't reach the door. They would make it on the door. Now it was only boards. So when more than 100 people are breathing, it gets wet. The breath is condensating, and when it's frozen outside, if somebody's hair was touching the board, he couldn't get away in the morning. He would have to ask somebody to help him release his. The door didn't open because the people would pee outside. It was a mountain of yellow ice, so somebody from outside would have to break the ice for us to go out. And we were there for a week maybe, until a ship was brought to us. A ship was, and I thought that one ship was only, there were two ships. Because some time ago, I got a research from a Sweden man, sent me a research from of the camps of Estonia, when I know the name of the ship I went by, and I know that there were two ships. All the others were killed on spot. Two ships were sent to Germany. Now, before entering the ship, we were given half a loaf of bread, almost half a loaf of bread. I put it in my bag. We went on the board of the ship. It was not a passenger ship. It was
Do you
a
remember
trade
the
ship.
name?
It was a trade ship, and it was still cold outside. So I managed to go down into a warehouse of the ship, and the very full